New Year's resolutions can be tough for many autistics. We might struggle with that ever so contrarian characteristic we call pathological demand avoidance, or PDA. Like me not putting this video out on January 1st on purpose because
don't tell me what to do.
And secondly, our need for routines can make adapting new habits a little bit more difficult for us. Let's talk about it. Hi guys, if you're a returning subscriber, you already know by now that my name's Jen and that on this channel I talk about being a female diagnosed with autism and ADHD. And if you're new here, you now also know that on this channel I talk about autism and ADHD. Now, to understand why New Year's resolutions might be tough for autistic individuals, we first need to appreciate what autism is. ASD is characterized by differences in social communication and behavior. Many autistic people have unique ways of thinking, processing information, and navigating the world. And included in these differences is a need for sameness and routine. And more recently, a lived experience that many of us are beginning to describe as pathological demand avoidance. So, first things first, let's talk about pathological demand avoidance. PDA is largely misunderstood. On the surface, people think it just means being oppositional to anything and everything. Like, you tell me you like the blue dress, I'm going to pick the red one. You tell me to go left, I'm going to go right. But that isn't exactly it. It goes much deeper than that. And a large component of it is actually expectations we make of ourselves. Of the many complex elements of PDA, a few that I think might apply to New Year's resolutions include failing to see a logical reason for something, a contrarian nature to popular trends, and a feeling of not being able to meet our own expectations. I'll break each one down into more detail, starting with the need to see a logical purpose in something. We can all agree that setting positive targets for ourselves is beneficial to our personal development, so we're not missing the logic in the overall concept of goal setting. Where the logic might begin to unravel, however, is in the timing of it all. Why do we suddenly all need to do this at this man-made interval we've collectively decided is a new year? What's so special about this day over any other day? Every day is technically an opportunity to set advantageous objectives for ourselves. And many of us find it illogical to try to bite off all our self-improvement in one big chunk, because this typically leads to spectacularly failing in one big chunk as well. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day and all of that. Instead, we know we could be using every day as an opportunity for gradual and manageable growth and personal development. But even if we did want to make a bunch of drastic changes all at once, there's a good chance many of us wouldn't want to do it on January 1st, simply because that's when everyone else is doing it. Which is a great segue into our second point, which is a contrarian nature to popular trends. For some reason, many of us tend to deride trends or despise anything that everyone else seems to be doing. Like, for example, the entire world deciding they're going to become better people on the exact same day. Now, if it were just a matter of understanding social cues or reduced social motivation, we might simply be indifferent to trends or popular expectations. But instead, many of us seem to despise them with a certain level of confidence. Because in the context of PDA, expectations may be the key word there. If the core of PDA is a strong aversion to feeling controlled or pressured, everyone doing a thing can feel like a demand in and of itself. And finally is our expectations of ourselves. Our sense of PDA does not just oppose external people or situations. Often, we're our own worst enemy because our demand avoidance sinks its teeth into the very demands we make of ourselves. Our autistic attention to detail and ADHD perfectionist tendencies can make everything seem bigger and more insurmountable, and usually this results in paralysis or procrastination. If the executive demands we place on ourselves are unobtainable, it's understandable why our employee half bucks against our supervisory half. We want to do good and get things right. So when even simple things feel like trying to swim across the Panama Canal with no flotation devices, our inability to even attempt them is a reflection of overwhelm, not laziness. Now let's talk about our need for sameness and routines. This one is pretty simple to figure out, so I'm not going to linger on it for too long. But most of us know by now that autistic people thrive on consistent routines. So sudden changes or new habits required by resolutions can cause significant anxiety and discomfort. Even seemingly minor changes can be an assault to our need for control and predictability. So when we're faced with resolutions that imply a significant shift in our routines, it can result in avoidance rather than motivation. And in addition to this, New Year's resolutions often involve abstract goals like being healthier or just improving ourselves in some unspecified way. And as you can imagine, most autistics need specific instructions. Once we have that, most of us are more than happy to be little workhorses, but vague goals is something that we likely cannot do. And even if we do have specific goals in mind, our executive functioning deficits like to come up and stick its foot out into our running path to trip us up. So in summary, the various aspects of demand avoidance can make us not want to set goals for ourselves, and trying to adapt to a whole bunch of new changes all at once can trigger a crap ton of fear and stress for a lot of us. And all of this is just another area where we try to measure up to neurotypical standards, even though we're not neurotypical. So, while all of this might seem pretty bleak and hopeless, I'm here to tell you that that is not at all the case. Solutions and hope. As autistic individuals, we're heckin' smart, and we're absolutely capable of personal growth and development. Having objectives to strive for provides us with a sense of purpose, direction, and accomplishment. It makes us resilient, and achieving any goal, big or small, releases dopamine, all of which have a positive impact on our mental health. So I do have a few strategies to share, but before I get into them, let's be honest, a lot of the self-help advice out there just doesn't work for us. But that doesn't mean none of it can. So first, let's talk about how we might be able to change our mindset on these issues, because when it comes to goal setting, we probably need to look at it differently because we think differently. Try thinking of them as ambitions instead of goals. This might help beat that PDA monster that demands so much of us. Think about what you will gain with any accomplishments you achieve in this process, not what you will lose if you fail or don't get it just right. And it might be necessary to consistently remind yourself that you're neurodivergent. Now, if you're anything like me, you're reminded of this in almost everything you do. So you're like, WTF, Jennifer? Yet you continue to hold yourself to neurotypical standards in the workplace and in the perception of your value. Let that one sink in for a second. So reminding ourselves that we're neurodivergent isn't intended to be a defeatist strategy. It's meant to be an empowering one. It reminds us to judge ourselves by neurodivergent standards instead of neurotypical standards. And finally, it might be helpful to write your goals through a third-party perspective, as if you were writing them for someone else, because doing this can allow you to analyze your goals with less emotional involvement and more of an objective perspective instead. All right, now let's talk about some of those strategies I promised you. And when thinking about these things, think about what tactics might work for you, because what might work for me may not work for you. And we should be considering everything. We shouldn't shut out solutions just because we think they're made for neurotypicals. Take the SMART approach, for example, which, as most of you know by now, stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Think about how some of that is actually pretty helpful for an autistic person. Making goals that are specific and measurable can reduce that vagueness and provide the specificity and direction that most of us need to get to work. And the time-bound aspect can actually satisfy your need for challenge if you have the comorbidity of ADHD, like me. Then there's the good old
Set visual reminders like calendars and charts and checklists.
but visual aids do oftentimes make our goals seem more concrete. Use your interests and strengths as motivators, and seek support from friends or family members. Having the accountability from someone you know and trust can be helpful. And bonus if you can find someone who's willing to body double with you to help you achieve your goals. But most importantly, is to practice self-compassion and celebrate small wins. I know that in some ways, many of you may have felt a sense of defeat in me going through some of those tips and tricks because life is already set on hard mode for most of us. Whenever someone comes at us with tips on how to be a better person when we already feel like we don't measure up, can feel very draining. But because we are capable and personal development has a ton of positive effects on our mental health, it's worth striving for. So focus on progress rather than perfection, and understand you're not the first human to ever have humaned, and that the struggles are a natural part of the goal-setting process for all of us. When you feel like crap about yourself, just remember, everyone else out there kind of thinks that about themselves too. And it might even be helpful for some of you out there to add failure to your checklist. That way, you can feel like you accomplished something that's a part of the process instead of feeling like you've encountered a show-stopping defeat. Finally, acknowledging and rewarding yourself for achieving small milestones along the way can help keep you motivated. All in all, if you fail to meet your ambitions or objectives today, remember, tomorrow is a brand new opportunity, because logically, we know that change and personal growth doesn't have to happen on January 1st. All right, guys, let me know in the comments section below how you feel about New Year's resolutions or tips and tricks of your own that you found helpful in working towards personal growth and achievements. Other than that, until next time, bye for now. Mwah. WTF, Jennifer?